Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Ikoyi Folarin. This morning, let's take a look at building structures because in spite of the horrendous rise to everybody who is involved in a building structure, no matter what the scale is, it might be a one-room self-contained house, what do they call it now, tiny house. It might also be a very modest bungalow. It might be a duplex of sorts. But in one way or the other, in spite of the horrendous rises in cement, somebody was telling me yesterday that the cost of cement has, if it hasn't hit 400, it's nudging 400 a bag. So this means to builders that it's crazy out there. So, but in spite of that, buildings are going on. It doesn't matter what state you go to, you find that there are active projects. So we want to use this to cast our mind back at the unfortunate 21-story building collapse on Gerard Avenue. And my guest this morning to help us look at it is somebody who's an expert, Engineer Wasiu Olokunola, consulting civil and structural engineer. Good morning to you, and thank you very much for making time for us.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Ikoyi Folarin. Nice meeting you.
Ikoyi will do fine, thank you. Thank you very much for making time. Now, before we launch, we go into it, we have a background sort of report. Let's catch that report, and then we'll come back and we'll start talking about it.
Okay, thank you.
More than 1 week after the collapse of a 21-story housing project in the upscale Ikoyi neighborhood of Lagos, the sorrow and tears around the disaster are yet to subside. For members of the Association for Consulting Engineering in Nigeria, engineers found guilty of complicity in the disaster will not be spared.
Our association, ICANN, have also set up a committee. But for us on the built environment, particularly engineering, at the end of the day, we are going to collect all these reports that will come out of the investigation, and we will come up with a report that will reflect exactly what has happened.
A building will collapse if the construction is faulty. There is a construction error. If the collapse is from design, then the consulting engineer is the one who is liable if it is a design error.
With the materials that we have in this country, the water is not up to standard. The reinforcement is not up to standard. Well, some of the cements are not up to standard. So what do? You as a designer, you are believing that you are using these things with their optimum strength, and you now design using those values. At the end of the day, you find that it's not good enough.
The ACEN boss also berated the state government for seeking foreign-made goods and consulting services, a trend which, according to him, has continued to devalue the practice.
The only way we can have more is when we are engaged by our government, by our people. And then when we change our attitude to make sure that when we get engaged in projects, we have to consult engineers.
The Ikoyi tragedy has become a wake-up call for both government and the private sector. These engineers say it is now time to make critical changes in dealing with building inspections, approvals, and enforcement. Adeshewa Dushoga, TVC News, Lagos.
Okay, and thanks for that report. 4,000 naira a bag, not 400. A slip of tongue. And I brought the price of cement crashing down to a tenth of where it is expected to be going out very, very soon. 4,000 naira a bag is what I meant, and that is expensive because there was a time when it wasn't it was a fraction of that. But whatever it is, the reason that is the situation, and that's just cement. It's also going for all building materials, Yet you would not believe the beaver busy pace at which constructions are going up. As I said, from little one-room, little constructions, to standard bungalows, to standard upstairs and downstairs, and even duplexes. Not to mention the mammoth builds, such as the Association of Consulting Engineers was majoring on there. Consulting engineers. Well, you are one yourself, a consulting civil and structural engineer. Do you align with, the thoughts of the president there that really, when you come to look at it, you need to grab hold of the, consulting engineers and query them? What went wrong?
Yes, thank you very much. You see, with buildings, it starts with planning. Planning takes first. It is after the planning, you now go into the design. If design is well done, it goes into the construction.
Okay.
So the planning itself is a major area. You see, but once you have done your planning well, you do your design. Design will tell you the number of floors or what you want to do. It starts with the architect, let's be frank, because they have the concept.
Okay.
They are the beautician of the buildings. They want the masterpiece. But the job of a structural engineer is to make the building stable, safe, economical, and good aesthetic.
Yeah.
So those are the main. Now, stability and safety.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Stability and safety. In other words, the building has to be functional. And what does the building have to be if not stable? You don't want it to collapse on you. Yes. But you said it starts from planning, and then you go on to the design. When you're planning, some professionals usually help you. Yes. You talked about the architect, and you need to submit these plans, maybe in the form of drawings or whatever, to a regulating authority. Yes. So that's why a lot of people say that even if you didn't get your planning right, then you're not going to get it approved. You won't get building approval unless you amend in line with the recommendations, suggestions, sometimes even enforcement of the planning authority. So how come people, well, I was going to ask, do people regularly, and now I'm not talking about the mammoth projects, do people regularly, in your experience, go ahead to planning without getting regulatory approval? I mean, to building without getting regulatory approval?
Well, it is wrong because ordinarily we have to follow rules and regulations. Rules, laws are meant to be obeyed. Anybody that contravenes that rules and regulations has committed an offense.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah, we know that.
We shouldn't be lawless in this country.
We shouldn't be, but I was asking for your opinion as a Nigerian who is in the field. Of course, you're a professional, and I don't imagine you would ever touch anything like that. But is it your understanding that more than a few people actually bypass the approval stage in going about their buildings? Or is that a fallacy? Is it impossible in Nigeria?
It is possible, because some people we want to shunt the system, maybe because of the requirements. If you are to get approval in the state now, you have to be ensured that you pay your tax.
Okay, you're talking about Lagos State, for example.
Yes, well, yeah, that's an area I'm so conversant with.
Yes.
So
okay, there are a number of requirements.
Yes.
One, before you get approval, you must be a tax-paying person.
You must, for 3 years.
Okay, otherwise you can't get any building approval.
Because the law is that for you to be able to build a house, you must be comfortable. So we
will know that from your tax.
Yes, let's see what you have done, what you have paid into the cover of the state government. And most people, they dodge this area.
Because I am taking it from the very basic step, from the very base step of somebody wanting to put together a one-room studio apartment, for example. Yes. Or much more common is maybe a 2 or 3 room bungalow. So these are, going concerns with our people. Of course, in addition to being a taxpayer, you cited the example of Lagos because that's where you're thoroughly familiar. There also are fees to be paid. And there is also the, well, I won't say likelihood, but because it is a regulatory authority, that they will not approve your plans for one reason or the other. And then you have to go and do it again. And some people might think of this as wahala, unnecessary wahala. And is it true that only architects really, you know, give plans for buildings that you take for approval or that you run with? Or are some people called draftsmen also, you know, seriously involved? And what's the difference between a draftsman and an architect?
All right, let me start with the last question. Draftsman is just an assistant to the architect. You see, like what said, they are to assist with drafting. They don't, about the design concept, it's not their job. But you know, in Yoruba something, wanting to way back
there you go.
I become I can't do the translation.
From working in close proximity to architects, they've become used to their processes, and sometimes might decide that I don't even need the architect this time. I can do what Oga would do. I can do it for you.
It's like copying, but it is wrong professionally. They don't. See, and that is why the issue of stamp and seal came into existence in Nigeria. Before then, you will see them practicing, but with this seal and stamp thing, the issue of draftsman doing the architectural work is no more in existence.
Okay, and let me find out now. You know, the thoughts of engineer was we have engineer Wasiu Olokunola in studio with us, but Mr. Bamidele Onalaja. Mr. Onalaja is the GMD and CEO of Revolution Plus Property, Chairman, Real Estate Developments Association of Nigeria, Lagos chapter. Good morning to you, sir, Mr. Onalaja. Okay, I hope we don't have that bandwidth thing disturbing us again today. Let me try one more time. Mr. Onalaja, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Morning.
Now, okay. Maybe if you've heard how we opened, we are trying to look. We started with a feature of the that, you know, something that featured a report that featured the Association of Consulting Engineers, trying to get to the bottom really of why we are having these building mishaps. And I started from, well, also taking from the report where the Association of Consulting Engineers say that actually the structural engineer is one of the first people that will be able to give useful information as to what went amiss. Now, I wanted to ask you, since you're a real development, you're a real estate developer, and chairman, in fact, of the Association of the Nigeria Lagos chapter, how does it work? How does it go? Are people able to cut corners at will? Or are there some standards in place as to the quality of professional personnel that have to be found or that should be found on a site?
Yeah, thank you so very much. Another opportunity to join you again and also to enlighten everyone about the built industry. For me, as a real estate developer and the chairman of Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria Lagos chapter, been in development world, in the built up development world over 19 years. The processes are very, very clear. You know, before you, taking Lagos as an example, before you develop anything, and first of all, as a developer, you first of all get the land, different lands in Lagos, different processes. Then you get experts to help you, starting from the architect. I hear the engineer in the studio also laying so much emphasis on architectural designs. Then you get to the structural design. The main person and the brain and the let's say the person that puts flesh and bone to construction really are structural engineers. So when things go wrong, the first point, the first person everybody points finger at the structural engineer, and that's the professionals. Because what an architect does, the architect does design, the structural engineer puts where the columns will be, how many recommend, how many iron, what type of concrete mixture, several things that you need to put for the structure to stand. So it is very important that anybody doing development, you get the right structural engineer and the M&E person.
Okay.
Now, in Lagos, for instance, people, if you say people don't bypass approvals, and that's not true. We have so many developers in Lagos, they are not members of REDA. That's for us, our Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria. We work closely with the government by making sure that all are done and vetted. So it is important that anybody that is building, though the approval process can be very cumbersome sometimes, can be very frustrating, but it's good. And what the Lagos State government has done through the Ministry of Physical Planning, they've gone ahead to simplify and the approval process. We had a meeting with the Commissioner for Physical Planning, that was in July as an association, and they told us with all the parastatals, they all came, over 150 of them came to the event, it's a stakeholders meeting, and they simplify, in fact, introduce an app where from the comfort of your office, you can also seek for your approval. Because the pain and the problem is the approval process is too long. I'm a developer. I borrowed money from the bank and I moved to the site, but without approval, I can't build. And you know, time value of money, interest is counting on money. So because people cannot wait, they move to site and start construction without relevant approval from the government. So that's one of the reasons why that causes building collapse. And that's why I'm so happy, because they lay down the approval process simpler so that people can quickly get the approval without so much stress. But people still cut corners. So many people still cut corners in Lagos without getting any approval, and I think the government needs to look into that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Onalaja. I'll come back to you. As you've explained, and Mr. Onalaja has, backed it up, being a developer himself, I'm deducing now that it's one thing to do everything that you've explained. You get the architect, you get the structural engineer and all of these people to do their work, but you still need to go for regulatory approval. I would guess that having even got the approval, you might not implement as approved, for example, simply because of extenuating circumstances. And first of all, is that a possibility that you can actually get to a critical stage, or shall we say a dangerous stage, without having gotten check-off approvals? You get to a certain stage, before you can go any further, somebody's supposed to come and look at it from an official point of view and see if this is according to plan, and if this is going on okay, then you proceed to the next step. Anything like that work? Does it work like that?
Theoretically, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, but you emphasize theoretically.
Yes, yes. As I involve in building processes, so I know what happens. So when you said cement was 4,000, as of today, a ton of iron rod is 430,000.
430,000
a ton.
And that's coming from where, about 2 years ago?
Well, 2 years it was under 160,000 or so.
There you go. There you go. So as I said, cement and all related building materials have gone up.
They have. Well, it's related to our currency. So, I mean, we don't live, Nigeria doesn't live in isolation. It's a global thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So the point you were making is that maybe it's the point Mr. Onalaja was making, that costs are going up. People are anxious to get to site. Yes. People are anxious to maybe complete the project before it runs away from them, meaning that they don't have the funds anymore. And a lot can happen in there. Now, can we go back to the point you made about theoretically, This is what is supposed to happen. Now, what did you mean by theoretically? You said you know so much about Lagos.
Yes.
Maybe share this insight with us.
Yes. You see, for every building, let's start from the foundation. That's what the 2019 Lagos State urban planning law says. That if you are at foundation level, if you are doing any concrete work for foundation, the professionals must endorse your papers. See, all the professionals, you have the architects, you have the structural engineer, you have the builder, see, and the government official.
Okay, I was going to say, is there a building inspector as well?
Yes, yes, they are supposed to sign.
That's at least 4 different professionals.
Yes. Then if you now go from foundation, you are now going from foundation to the ground floor level. When you want to deck, they will still have to do it.
Come back again and check that everything is hunky-dory.
That's what the theory says. You see, but in practice,
okay.
You see,
I'm interested in
now,
the practice.
If you have so many buildings scattered in Lagos, see, how do you get all these people in to do what that theory says?
Because some people might even be handling multiple projects at the same time.
Yes. And that is why we are saying that there is need to have synergy between the people in the private sector and the people in the public sector.
You know, at this point, let me go back to, thank you very much. Let me go back to Mr. Onalaja at this point. Starting off, if you're with me, Mr. Onalaja, starting off exactly from where Engineer Olokunola just left off, the checks and the balances, which he spoke about being more theoretical than anything. I want to now remember, even though we can't really comment very much on the Gerard Road building collapse because it's the subject of an investigation and they will come up with what exactly happened in that case. But there's no way you won't be able to, you sort of know that the now, unfortunately, late, developer of that project, he is reputed to have done something that is not small in the UK. He is reputed to have done something that is not small again in South Africa. And to the best of our knowledge, there's no news report to the contrary. Those projects haven't collapsed. What is going on here? That a person who has done it in 2 international centers that I imagine will conform to international best practices in the trade. When it came to the situation in Nigeria, we have this unfortunate accident that we are yet to get to the bottom of. What would be your best guess as to what's going on, imagining that the reputation and the capabilities were the same in South Africa, same in the UK, you now come here, this has happened. What would be your best guess?
Thank you so very much. I've said it again and again in every opportunity I've had to speak on this matter on the 21-story building collapse in Ikoyi. I've granted so many interviews as the chairman of Redan Lagos Real Estate Developer Association of Nigeria. I think, first of all, Femi, who is the MD of First Core, I've done, in fact, as a matter of fact, is the first Black African to build an high-story building, 7-story in London. Thereafter, he moved also to South Africa to demonstrate such. And First Core homes in South Africa, as we speak right now, people are living there. Several developments in South Africa. In fact, as a matter of fact, also, the 21-story that collapsed wasn't his first construction in Lagos. He did one already in Ikoyi, and people are living there. So, and don't forget that this particular one that collapsed, there are 3 units of it. We have the 16 unit floors, we have 15, and we have 21. The one that went down is a 21-story building. So many things went wrong, which I will classify as human error. Because for someone that have done so much construction and have done, this is not his first high rise. So I don't believe he wanted to cut corners. Even the consistent rise in building materials, like my engineer on set already said also, wouldn't want him to cut corners because he knows the value of money and human lives. So I think the professionals, that's why when I said the project manager, the person that project managed this project, and the structural engineer, because the way that structure came down, it came down to even down to the foundation. It's a total collapse. Total collapse. And when a project collapses in totality, you start and investigate from the foundation. The piling, how many piling were they recommended for that project to be done? How many piling sections were done? It collapsed in totality. That means
the piling that you're talking about, the piling you're talking about, let me bring it back to the studio and Engineer Olokunola, because you're a structural engineer. The piling that is talking about underground pillars, right? That the structure actually effectively rests on. Is that roughly accurate as to what? Because it's talking about pilings, the depth of those pillars, underground pillars.
Yes, thank you. That is the basic of the whole thing. Anybody that wants to investigate, sorry, I keep on using Yoruba. You see, I can't translate that.
Well, again, that would be something that, look, the foundation,
yes,
the foundation has to be good.
Yes.
Otherwise, whatever you put on top of it is coming down.
Yes. I don't want to go into this 21-story thing, but we cannot but mention it. If you are doing 21-story building, you need to get qualified geotechnical engineers.
Okay.
You see, structural engineers cannot even do it. They still another specialist. They call them geotech, just the short form. They will have now to come, do the test
of the soil,
and advise you, this is the type of foundation you are to use. No structural engineer will deviate. If you don't have confidence in that specialist, go to another one.
Okay.
Compare. You see?
So these are the bits and pieces of professionalism that must come together, and they differ from building type to building type.
They differ. So differ from one to the other. Even where we are in the studio, you may dig and get lateritic red soil. Somewhere you will get a very bad soil. For example, let me give an example of dolphin.
Okay.
Dolphin, I happened to be the engineer in charge when the Lagos State Development was doing it. I was in government then. You won't believe that it is a pit, for about 40 feet.
Okay. You
see, so the
soft pit,
yes.
It's not a substantial
that's
structure.
Why they call it dolphin. This refuse, long time sedimentation of See, you can see. So if you try to do anything outside piling there, one is in trouble.
It's not going to be successful.
I don't want to mention some nearby areas. You see what is happening.
Okay. Stay with us, please, Engineer Mr. Onalaja, and we'll just take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll start taking your calls as well as soon as we come back. Stay with us, please. Okay, so welcome back, and we have remotely with us this morning Mr. Bamidele Onalaja. I tend to think about everybody concerned with building as an engineer, but Mr. Bamidele Onalaja didn't say he was as much. He's a GMD and CEO, Revolution Plus Property, and Chairman, Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria, Lagos chapter. That's him right there. And in studio here, we have Engineer Wasiu Olokunola, consulting civil and structural engineer. You were speaking about when you were in government, that means you're no more in government, but and you continue to use your qualification and your skill. When you were in government, this whole matter about approval and how it goes, were you close to the approval process, and what does it take, so that we can put this in context when you were in government?
Yes, thank you. The history needs to be told again. When I was in government, I think I joined government in 1980 from a private sector to government, purposefully to check approval drawings, structural one.
Okay.
Then the ministry, we had then Mr. Tamplana Makinde. I don't think he's still, if he's still alive, may God continue to
bless him.
To bless him, you know. He was the head of town planning control then. Any building above 4 floors will be taken down to LSDPC. And we will do, we had an architect Mrs. Ajayi, is still around. He's a retired permanent secretary as well. And my humble self in charge of structural drawings. You see, when drawings are sent from Alausa, then it will go down to the office of Mrs. Ajayi, the architect. And then after vetting the architectural aspect, it comes down to me as the engineer in charge. And then we will check. You see, when you are checking, there are 2 ways. It's either the person you are checking his job doesn't know what he's doing, or he knows more than you.
Okay. Okay.
So by the time you take the drawings, you check it, you know where you belong. So, but in most cases, we found that competent people were in charge of structural designs. And even then, some of us learned, myself, I learned a lot. Even the book I published, it's through the knowledge of these advanced people that I was able to publish it.
Okay. So there's no lack of knowledge in the procedures and what needs to be done. The next thing, I think, I don't know if it was you or it was Mr. Onalaja who had said that, and maybe you want to comment on that. With the size of Lagos, it's not the biggest landmass state, yet a heck of a lot of building is going on. Are there enough? You were just telling us what goes on, what used to go on in LSDPC, that kind of a thing. Yes. Can that LSDPC, set up, can it really service all of the buildings that are going to go up and that need to be approved?
Well, you see, the population keeps increasing. At the time I was saying 1980 or whatever, if you look at the population then, it's almost about 40 years. And today, so the population Lagos has grown to over 20 million. So there is need. You see, Lagos itself is more than some African countries.
Certainly.
So there is need to decentralize. We have 5 divisions in Lagos State. Decentralize so that not every drawings, whatever, will come to Alausa or the old secretariat.
Okay. Which is the case now.
That's part of the bottleneck.
And that's the case now.
Yes, and you see, you can't do away with bureaucracy in government.
So are you saying that with this idea that, look, if the building, if the project happens to be in Badagry, it doesn't need to come to the headquarters. You can probably have a center there.
Yes, not everything.
Not everything.
But certain, like because I was saying, 4 floors and above only came to LSDPC then.
Okay.
Anything less than so it's they were doing it at Alausa or the old secretariat then.
Okay. Mr. Onalaja, what do you think of that particular idea that the fact that everything is centralized also contributes to the bottleneck sometime, and this might have adverse consequences? What do you think of that particular notion?
Well, thank you so very much. LSDPC as an organization is an organization of the government. They have few projects they are doing. But I'm going to speak on behalf of the ministry, let's say the Ministry of Physical Planning, that organize approvals in the generality for all Lagosians, not LSDPC per se now. Because the Ministry of Physical Planning have been empowered through LABSCA, material testing, ministry. They have so many other agencies under Ministry of Physical Planning, being supervised presently by the Commissioner for Physical Planning, Dr. Engineer Salako, and which have several agencies of government. LAFSA is the Lagos State Physical Planning Permit Authority. So from my experience recently, an idea they now have zonal offices. So they have zonal offices in Etiosa, there's zonal offices in Ekpe, in Ikeja, in Badagry. So all the approvals really right now doesn't really go to Alausa. So the zonal offices and the zonal officers take charge of such approvals. But I think the one that goes to Alausa right now is maybe the IRICs, maybe from 8 floors, which the commissioner himself or the governor needs to approve. So there are zones in physical planning agencies now that they have, like myself, I want to build, I don't really necessarily go to Alausa, I go to Etiosa. It depends on where my project is. If it's in Ikeja, I go to Ikeja. They have Ikeja planning permit office. They have Badagry, they have in Ikorodu, they have in Ekpe, all the geopolitical zones, the 5 zones of Lagos have been, they have zonal offices. And they have everybody, like the architect, everybody. So the era of packing all your drawings, going to Alausa, I think is a thing of the past, unless you are going to high-rise development.
Okay, as the engineer was saying, above 4 floors.
Yes, even now is about, if from 7 floors, even above one is like up to 5 floors, the zonal offices still approved. So there's a bit of improvement on the physical planning reforms of Lagos State.
Let me get Engineer Olokunola's comment on what you've just said.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, I started by the issue of tax clearance issue. You see, I got a building approved last year, and this is, I'm talking from experience. You see, there is no file that will not get to the old secretariat. There is an office of this tax office there. Your file will get there, and they will assess you. If you don't pay what you are supposed to pay, no approval. I'm saying it.
Okay. They will assess you what? Based on the plans, the drawing plans you have set up, or you know how you make your living?
No, they want to know whether you are tax compliant.
Okay.
See, you give them the details of the amount you have paid here and there. If it is enough, they will now endorse it. It will be processed further.
But should they find there's anything wrong with it, you are saying categorically that in Lagos State you will not get the approval.
I am saying it, and if it, well, I want anybody to deny it.
Okay. So, well, Mr. Onalaja was saying that things, you know, are sort of, you know, moving along, and that it's not as we thought. But then, Mr. Onalaja, what do you think of the categorical statement that, look, if you're experienced enough, you know that when you get to that stage, you certainly will be referred to, if you want, Alausa or the old secretariat building. What do you make? How do you? What would be your comment on that discrepancy?
Yes, we cannot rule out in some cases. We cannot rule out in some cases where you be referred to Alausa or old secretariat. But I'm speaking from experience as a developer.
Okay.
I've had so many developments in Lagos, and I've have some cases where I have to go and to take the documents to Alausa. You can't rule it out. And I have cases where it is the zonal office in Etiosa, local government area, that handles, but you know, so many things, there are prerequisites. The planning is prerequisite to so many things. You know, number one, the government wants to know if you are paying your tax as a company or as an individual. You have to be up to date in your tax. Maybe that's what the engineer is referring to. But it's not every document that they take to Alausa. But you must be up to date in your tax. So if, peradventure, you want to build like a 4...
Okay. I think every time your screen goes to sleep, it cuts your audio as well. I'm so sorry, Mr. Onalaja, we can't hear you, and that's because I've sort of deduced that every time your screen goes to sleep, it cuts your audio as well. In the meantime, Marzio Okorafor is on the line. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, sir. Honest, let us look at this way. There is need for federal government, state and local government to establish what we call Ministry of Soil Texture. Because all this is start from the soil. If the government can establish that ministry, and that ministry, any approval they give to any building or any structure, they must take their signboard with the number, everything written there, so that passerby will know exactly. Anyone that people do not see such number, they should report to the government. Not a question of waiting before them. And there are so many things which we overlook in terms of this building collapse. So, let us face the reality of life. If you go to the market, you ask yourself, what is the job of standard organization? Don't they go there, agree that they go, but the supervision work they are doing, they should recruit people that are truly experts in all this, to be going around to check all these materials they sell in the market. So, if you go around to the market today, not only Lagos, everywhere in Nigeria. Something happened 3 days ago. I went to the market when I saw some things here. I started asking myself, how can somebody import or bring something for sale? And people are buying. I was asking why are you buying? He said, I don't get much. I said, is it a must that you must build a house with something? They say, we go manage. I say, you go manage. At this present day, it is our problem in Nigeria that everybody wants to manage money. I did that. Look, check around the whole Nigeria, not Lagos alone. There are structures you see today. They have started cracking. And people are living there. Nobody cares to check. When it happens, we start blaming devil, start blaming witches and wizards. Where is the witches and wizards? It's the people that are the witches and wizards that are creating their own problems. If you don't have sufficient money to bid, please don't bid. Go down it. If you want to bid, be one who self-content and manage life.
Yeah.
It's not a question of becoming established victim that is very, very detrimental to human being, which is not healthy. So, Sayuri, honestly speaking, Nigeria, the way we are moving in terms of rush, grab, is not healthy. 80% of structures in Nigeria, they are not comfortable for human beings, whether Nigerian like it or not. Today, whether it is a GRA or anywhere, the worst you see today is in the village, the urban area. So that one is nothing to write home about. We have to be careful because we take our hand and buy something that kills us. Not that the government or anybody, Nigerians are taking their hands to buy debt because the area we face reality of life is better for us. Thank you very much. If you want to build a house, build a standard house with better structures. People that are telling fake things, everybody will give account of this.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Thank you very much, Marzio Korafo. Okay. I don't want us to get too technical with this because it's a highly technical, field. All the people that come together to make a building good, they have to spend so many years in training, and there's quite a host of them, and all of them have to sort of interlock and be in synergy for you to be good. Now, one of the things that you can see, one of the most visible aspects of a building are the bricks, aka blocks, with which you erect a building. Now we've seen videos of blocks that just you can't even lift them by their very own weight; they crumble. Let me ask, Engineer Olokunola, the bricks have specifications, but if you try to get many more out of a bag of cement, for example, of course, you're going to be compromising the quality of the bricks. How often or how much of a concern is that to builders and professional people?
Yes, thank you very much. You see, you said you want us to go to consider the low-class people that wants to...
The ordinary person.
Ordinary people.
Yes.
Now, the basic material is block.
Yes.
And you see, there is a code for everything. There is a British code, BS 5628.
Okay.
It tells you what the size of your block should be.
Okay.
The void should not be more than 50%. That's what the law says. Even Eurocode says it, because we are now using Eurocode.
Okay. In Nigeria.
Yes. Well, we have become international now. So, but look at our blocks being produced. I tell you, it's about 75% void, 25% solid, That is the beginning of our problems. Our standard organizations will assist.
Sir, how can that be? Since you know this, and any engineer or builder worth his salt or would also know it, how come he could then bring what I would refer to as substandard materials to his build? 50% void is the recommended.
Yes.
You say there's a 75% voids are not uncommon. So let me take that to the builder, to the developer. Sir, are you there, Mr. Onalaja? I would want your comment on this particular point.
I'm here, sir.
Okay.
I'm here with you.
I want your comment on this particular point. It's a simple one, and everybody knows what a block is. If we don't know what piling is and all the other things, we know what a block is. Now, this whole matter of 50% void being the recommended, and there are plenty of 75% voids in the market, what would be your comment, sir?
Thank you so very much. I wouldn't say what engineer is saying is not true, because so many bad builders, not even developers now, are in the market. We've seen blocks that you carry, and before you throw it down, it's gone.
Yeah, that's not even about the void yet, sir. That's not even about the void yet.
Yes, I know, I understand. I think everything boils down to people trying to cut corners. People trying to cut corners so that to maximize profit at the detriment of lives and properties. And that's why I keep saying every time, because number one, the rising cost of building materials in Nigeria is escalating. And as a developer, even as a builder, somebody that wants to build his or her own house, if you are not careful and you are looking at the cost, if you are not ready to build the house, leave it till you are ready and you have the ability to put the money together. Mm-hmm. So because if you cut corners, you will lose not only your property, you will lose people's lives and even your life.
Indeed. In short, you could end up with a disaster. Let me bring in Ada, who has called in from Jos. I beg your pardon, Mr. Onalaja. Ada in Jos. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Yuri. Good morning to your guest. Please, I want to find out from the engineer there. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I want to find out from him. How can a building that is a high-rise building, which is more than maybe 8 story and up to 21 and above, how come if the foundation has a problem, how is it possible for the next structure, being put in place will stand without showing any signs of cracks, or is it that when it shows it, the people working on it decide not to attend to it? That is one question. Then another one, I read something, and I was taken aback about this issue of 21-story building thing. That there was no insurance. I thought that a building of such magnitude should have an insurance cover. I don't know if it's true, but that's what the media put out.
Okay.
Then, over 13 years now, there's been the report that we have had more than 200 building collapse. To date, I don't know if you know any, Mr. Yuri.
Okay. Now, I beg your pardon. I'm going to interrupt you at that because we've run out of time, and I do want to get to as many of the points you raised as possible. Ada, taking it in reverse order, Ada spoke about, incessant collapses of building. Now, it's important because you actually headed up a committee to look into how to stem this, that committee was still working last year?
Yes, it was last year, March. We had a collapse 14th of March, 2019. Well, I think I was invited to the studio on that day, like this interview. As I was just going, I just got a phone, say, they enjoyed this, the interview. Will I like to be a member of that committee?
And that's how you got on that committee?
That was it.
Okay.
So you see the power of media.
Yes. Have you been able to, that committee of yours, has it been able to affect anything with the view of preventing these kind of things from happening? Is government amenable to the recommendations?
Yes, we have the recommendations. I think the committee had recommendations, 3 types. We gave immediate measure,
Okay.
medium measure, and long-term measure.
Okay.
You see, we found that only 2 were implemented by government. That is, that control agency appeal board committee, that one was done. And then the legislate the urban and regional planning.
Okay.
Those 2. You see, all others,
Are still
government
under
has not.
consideration.
Yes.
I think that's the way government will put
Yeah,
it. Are still
see,
under consideration.
Yeah, but see, whatever anybody is going to find is going to be from one problem or the other. But the main thing, these recommendations will still need to be repeated. See?
Well, our time is really, coming down, in slivers now. And so let me come back to you, Mr. Onalaja. Thank you very much for your time. How safe do you think it is to build in Lagos, given what we've been experiencing now? We've established that there's no shortage of professionals, but in terms of processes and procedures, how safe do you think it is? Did you hear me? Did you hear me? Do you want me to repeat the question?
People to build in Lagos. I got your question.
Okay, please go ahead, sir. Very quickly, because I've run out of time.
Categorically, that it's very, very safe to build in Lagos. It's very safe to build in Lagos.
All other things being equal.
Yes, I'm going somewhere. I say following the laid down procedures and standards, because when I say that, building construction starts just like the engineer, we agree with me, start from a process, which is the design, then you go to structure, and then so if you follow the laid down procedures and the government on its own part does its own part by making sure that the regulatory bodies work with you, the developer or whoever is building, to make sure that they look at your designs. This is the time I want to call on the government officials. Look at the designs in total. And also the
okay, Mr. Onalaja, I'm going to have to interrupt you, sir, because we got the import of what you're saying. Government has to be, much more scrupulous, would appear to be what you're saying. Look at these designs, as you said, in total. Thank you very much, Mr. Bamidele Onalaja, GM and CEO, Revolution Plus Property, Chairman, Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, Lagos chapter, and also Engineer Wasiu Olokunola. You consulting civil and structural engineer. I really have to thank you very much for coming on, sir, and giving us the benefit of your insight in this particular sector of our lives, building.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that's our program today. Then please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folarin. Bye bye for now.